This video will explain how to play Imperial spells in Steam. This video will cover rules for 2 to 6 players playing with awards. Other variants can be found in the rulebook. To set up Imperial, first you must arrange the starting board. Each board has A or B on one side and C on the other. 2 to 3 player, 4 player, 5 player, and 6 player games each have a different board configuration. First select A or B and then take the required amount of A or B boards for your player count. Take note of the city colors on each of the boards that you have selected. Next, find the C boards, which can be found on the back of the A and the B boards, which has the color of cities you are missing on your selected A or B boards. Arrange these boards in the arrangement found in the rulebook for your player count. The resulting board should include 6 cities, all of different colors. Next, the resource tokens must be placed on the board. Place 1 yellow hylatine on every desert hex. Place 1 black vital silver on every mountain hex. Place 1 red wither wheat on every lava hex. Place 1 blue aerolite on every lake hex. Place 1 green heartwood on every forest hex, and place 1 gray charisma on every glacier hex. This should cause every hex on the board to have exactly 1 resource in it, except for the purpley black Wasteland hexes and the city hexes. Now the cities must be assembled with the correct demand tiles. There are 6 cities in the game, and each city will contain a different color of demand tiles. In a 2-player game, each city has 1, 2, and 3 point demand tile. In 3 to 5 player games, add 1 additional 2 point demand tile. And in 6 players games, add 1 additional 1 point demand tile. Once the cities have been assembled, they should then be placed on the board on the city space that has the same color as the demand tiles that are in the city. The spell cards must be shuffled, then the top 6 spell cards will be laid face up to form the starting market. Each specialist deck should be shuffled. Then take a number of specialists equal to the number of players plus 1 and leave those face down on the table. Note that the tray included in the game indicates that it should be the number of players plus 3. This is incorrect. Shuffle the award tiles and deal 2 face up. In a 2-player game, if the second opinion award tile is revealed, remove it from the game and replace it with another. Make sure to have the supply of additional Wasteland hexes and mana available on the table. At this point, the setup should look something like this. Select a start player and give them the start player marker. Then, in reverse turn order, each player selects a company. When a player selects a company, they also select their captain. They may choose a captain that is specific to that company, or an available wild captain. Once a player has selected a captain, they should receive their company folio, train cards, and conductor. They then place their captain face up on the captain spot on their board, 5 mana at the top right of their board, and their conductor at the far left-hand conductor space on their board. Once all players have selected their company and captain, in forward player order, each player places their starting headquarters. To place their starting headquarters, player look at the top left-hand corner of their folio. This will indicate what their home terrain is. They first place a train car on any unoccupied hex that matches their home terrain. Then place a train car on one unoccupied hex that is adjacent to the first train they placed. This second placement can never be placed on a wasteland or on a city space. Once all players have placed their starting headquarters, you are ready to begin play. The goal of Imperial is to be the player with the most victory points at the end of the game. Delivering goods, collecting demand tiles, and awards are all sources of victory points. For the most part, most points will come from deliveries. At different points during the game, players will gain the ability to make a delivery. When a player makes a delivery, they first select a city that is adjacent to their network. A player's network is every hex that they have a train car in. Each city collects a different color of resource. Once a player has selected a network-adjacent city that they will be delivering to, they choose any amount of goods that are in their network and match the color of the city that they're delivering to, and then deliver these goods, placing these goods on their player folio to score them points at the end of the game. Note that a player's network does not need to be continuous from a resource that they're delivering to the city they are delivering it to. So long as the resource is in their network, it can be delivered. So, in the example here, all 3 of the green heartwood resources in the blue player's network can be delivered to the green city. After delivering resources, players take the highest level demand tile they are eligible from the city they delivered to. Note that all demand tiles require 1 more resource than the points they are worth. So in this case, the 2-point demand tile requires you to deliver 3 resources to the city, and since the blue Kingsline player delivered 3 resources, they receive this 2-point demand tile. Many effects in Empyreal will require you to spend mana. When you spend mana, simply place the spent mana off to the side of your board. Although this mana is no longer usable, it is not gone forever, and can be got back by reclaiming mana. Play will begin with the start player. At the start of every player's turn, they may activate any amount of their specialists in any order. Players begin with a captain, but can acquire an engineer, surveyor, and station master later on in the game. Specialists must be face up to be activated. To activate a specialist, spend the indicated mana cost and resolve the ability. Then, if that specialist was a captain, engineer, or surveyor, flip the specialist face down. Station masters are not flipped down when they are activated, though commonly are only able to be activated at specific times, specified by their ability. Full explanations of each specialist's ability can be found in the rulebook. Once a player has activated all the specialists they wish to activate, they have 2 options on how they will use the rest of their turn. They can either move and activate, or administrate. Moving and activating will be gone over first. When a player chooses to move and activate, they first move their conductor forward to the right on the conductor track 1 to 4 spaces. Moving forward 1 space is free. Moving forward 2 spaces costs 1 mana. Moving forward 3 spaces costs 3 mana, and moving forward 4 spaces costs 6 mana. Once a player has moved their conductor pawn, they choose which spell cards they would like to activate. A player may activate any or all of the spell cards in the column they move to. Each spell card has inherent mana costs that need to be paid if they are going to be used. If a spell card has no mana symbol on the top left-hand corner, its inherent mana cost is 0. In addition, if a player chooses to activate 2 spell cards, they must pay 1 additional mana. And if a player decides to activate all 3 spell cards in a column, they must pay 3 additional mana. Reminders of these move and activation costs can be found at the top of each player board. Once a player has paid the cost to activate their spell cards, they resolve the effects of the activated spell cards in any order. The specific effects of all spell cards can be found in the rulebook, though a common effect is to allow the player to build new track, placing new train cards on the board. That will be gone over now. Build track abilities will specify a specific type of hex that players may place a train car on. While placing new train cars, players must always place adjacent to their existing network, unless otherwise stated. In this example, the green player is activating the Heat Seeker spell card, allowing them to place in both a desert and lava hex. You can see adjacent to their network is 3 desert hexes and 1 lava hex. This means that they can place a train car in that 1 lava hex and any one of the 3 desert hexes that are adjacent to them. Note that you never are allowed to place train cars on city hexes or wasteland hexes, unless an effect specifically tells you that you may. Each hex is allowed to contain 3 different players' train cars. You may never use an effect that would cause a 4th train car to enter a space, or cause one of your train cars to enter a space that already contains one of your train cars. When a player builds track, they have the option of paying mana to transfer through wastelands, cities, or hexes containing opponents' train cars. To do this, Players pay the associated cost with the hex that they are transferring through. 4 for a wasteland, 3 for a city, and 2 for a hex containing an opponent's train. They then consider hexes adjacent to the transferred through hex network adjacent, allowing them to build track on the other side of these obstacles. While transferring, players still must end up placing on the specified hex that their build track ability allows them to place on. A player may transfer through multiple things at once if they have the mana to pay for all of the transfers. If the hex a player wants to transfer through contains both a wasteland and an opponent's train car, they pay the highest cost, so they would pay 4 to transfer through the wasteland and ignore the 2 cost for transferring through an opponent's train. Some abilities allow players to place new wastelands on the board. When a player uses one of these abilities, they choose a hex that is adjacent to their network, that is not a city or a wasteland, and they place one of the wasteland hexes on this hex. Train cars that were sitting on that hex remain on the new wasteland hex, though resources that were sitting on the hex are destroyed and returned to the supply. The other option that players have on their turn, other than moving and activating, is to administrate. Administrating gives the indicated 3 effects. The first is to reclaim all of their spent mana. Any mana placed on the side of their board is placed back onto their board, ready for use. Next, they refresh their captain and engineer, readying them for use on future turns. Finally, they gain a spell car from the spell car market. When an ability allows you to gain a spell car, choose a spell car that is face up and place it on your folio. Spell cards can be placed in any column, though your second row must be filled before you start placing spell cards on your third row. If your folio is completely filled with spell cards, you may begin placing spell cards over top of existing spell cards, replacing the older spell cards. When the number of available face-up spell cards becomes 2, discard the 2 face-up spell cards off to the side and replace them with 6 new ones from the deck. This can happen in the middle of players taking spell cards. For example, if a player has to take 2 spell cards at a time and there's only 3 left in the market, they take the 1 from the existing 3, then discard the last 2, refresh back to 6, and then take their second spell card from 6 new ones in the market. In summary, a player's turn always consists of first using specialists and second moving and activating or administrating. The final space on the conductor's path is end of the line. This space may not be moved past, so players must always stop on this space. First, when moving to end of the line, players make a delivery, as explained at the beginning of this video. Then, players choose one of the bonuses available at end of the line. The 3 columns denote the 3 different bonuses. The first is to gain a new mana and reclaim any spent mana. Another is to simply gain 2 spell cards from the spell card market. The final option allows players to refresh their captain and engineer and gain a new specialist. When a player chooses to gain a specialist, they select a type of specialist they have not yet gained. Engineers are exhausted on use but can be refreshed at end of the line and during administration. Surveyors are exhausted on use, have a powerful effect, but can never be refreshed. Station Masters have a passive ability that is always in effect. When a player chooses which type of specialist they wish to gain, they look at all of the cards in the face-down stack, select one to add to their folio, and replace the rest back down into the stack. This means that each time a player chooses to gain a specialist, there will be less options for future players choosing to gain that same type of specialist. Finally, once a player has gained their bonuses at end of the line, they move the conductor pawn back to the start of their conductor path. Turns will continue until one of the 2 game end conditions are met. The first being a player having collected the required amount of demand tiles for your player count. The second being a player having placed all of their train cars on the board. When either of these two game end conditions are met, continue the current round so that all players have had the same amount of turns. Then, each player gets to make one final delivery in reverse turn order. Note that this final delivery is not a full turn. Players may not use specialists during this delivery, though players still are eligible for taking demand tiles during this final delivery. Finally, players score the goods that they delivered and are on their folio, the demand tiles they've collected, and the awards. Each good that is on a player's folio is worth 1 point. Each demand tile is worth points equal to the number on the demand tile. Both awards will be scored. The player that achieved the award's goal the best receives 6 points. Second best receives 4 points, and third best receives 2 points. If two players are tied for the award, they split the points for the two positions they would be tied for. Then, the player with the most points is the winner.